The Dallas Cowboys were successful in Week 18, just not on the scoreboard. We'll explain why next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're talking about the Cowboys' 34-17 loss to the New York Giants. And yet, Landon, pretty good day for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, the loss really was only on the scoreboard, it felt like, and they did kind of execute the soft tank that we had hoped that they were going to do, just because, you know, there was so much at stake for their draft order in this game, just because of the fact that all the NFC teams are kind of closely packed together and lots of opportunities. So, yeah, obviously the key thing here we talked about was making sure Dak got out of the game uninjured, making sure we got out of the game without major injuries. I think from what it sounds like, we got a big check mark there. And then, you know, not destroying your potential draft potential status. So and I think that they managed to do that. They didn't win the game, which was obviously counter to the goal number 2. But yeah. I think ultimately this was exactly the kind of game we had hoped the Cowboys.
Well, and to be fair, that wasn't even goal number 2 for us. It was, you know, we wanted to see more of Jaydon Blue and Phil Maffa, which we did. We'll get to those guys in a little bit. We'll also talk about that defense later on. But you're right. The number 1 goal was you wanted to come out of this game relatively healthy. We talked about how last year they had so many big injuries coming out of the season that it made, you know, rebuilding and retooling this team really hard, because Trayvon Diggs was coming off a major knee injury. DeMarvion Overshown was coming off a major knee injury, and we weren't even sure if he was going to play at all in 2025. You had Dak Prescott coming off a big hamstring injury. For the most part, this is a pretty healthy team going into the offseason. And talking about Dak Prescott, this has got to be one of the healthier off seasons he's had in a long, long time. And if you believe that the Cowboys window with Dak is 2026 and 2027, it's really nice that he's going to have a full off season where he's not rehabbing, where you can kind of continue some of the momentum you've had on offense this season.
Yeah, he had a quote. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like he's going to have the greatest offseason of his career because of this, right? It makes sense, right? Like he's going in healthy for one of the few times, and we've talked about it. Like the goal at this point, even at certain points during the season, was to set this team up for 2026, and that became apparent. As soon as Micah Parsons got traded a week before the season, so. You didn't want to like spoil that at the very last minute by having a long-term injury to any of your superstars, but especially to your quarterback. So to get kind of through this game and having him play a whole half and getting through unscathed, I think was a real win for the Cowboys.
Let's talk about the real reason why we were excited that the Cowboys lost on Sunday. It's because of the draft pick. Now, I think when you're talking about the differences in like 1 or 2 spots, I have a problem, quote unquote, throwing away those games. Like there were a couple games going on this afternoon, like with the Lions, where if they won, it might only move them down 1 spot in the order. If they lost, they would move 1 spot the other way. Like that's just not a big deal to get upset about. But in the case of the Cowboys in this game, there was a real possibility, with the way that things played out on Sunday, that if you were to beat the Giants, you would be picking at 18, which is the very last spot you could have for any non-playoff teams, whereas a loss, you could be drafting as high as 11. Now we know the Cowboys are going to be drafting at 12, and you and I talked about this last week. The difference between picks 18 and 12, not just in the quality of player that you're going to get, which is massive, but in terms of value, it's like the difference of a second-round pick. And for a meaningless Week 18 game, did you really want to throw away a second-round pick of value? I think we learned that the answer was no.
No, and I think that, look, we talked about the difficulties of handling a game like this, right? And the fact that you have to kind of serve a bunch of different masters here. You have to, some play. You will have to at least appear like you're trying to win the game, so you don't kind of imbue that losing culture on your team. You have to help certain players that are trying to hit certain goals, reach those goals. You got to make sure that your key players don't get injured, so you don't ruin your 2026 season. And you got to do all of this while ultimately not winning the game, or certainly not trying to win the game so hard. So yeah, and I think in a case like this, like you said, it's when it's a situation where you're just moving up a spot or two, it's not even worth trying to navigate this, right? But in a situation like the Cowboys are in, where it like you said, a second round pick worth of difference here, you kind of have to like make some sort of attempt here. And even though it's a very difficult needle to thread, it feels like the Cowboys were able to accomplish it by strategically subbing in guys and strategically IRing guys and just making sure that there was just enough talent on the field to look like a full NFL team, but not quite enough talent to win against a terrible New York Giants team.
And I promise you, we're going to dive into draft coverage here over the next 4 months. You guys are probably going to be sick of the draft by the time we get there. But you and I watched college football all last week, and the number of guys that we thought, oh man, this guy would be awesome at pick 12, but there's no way he gets to 17 or 18. You just don't have to worry about that now. And now there's a good chance that you maybe get the best linebacker in the class at 12. Maybe you get the second best edge rusher at 12. Maybe you get the best cornerback in the draft at 12. None of those were going to be possible picking at 17 or 18. And we'll talk about this here in a little bit, but with how much talent this defense needs, it's a big deal, because I do think you can get an impact starter on day one at pick number 12. I'm not so sure you're going to be able to do that at 18.
Yeah, I think, it's easy to kind of convince yourself, well, maybe it's not a big difference. I don't need these 6 picks. It's not that big a deal. Then you go watch that college football quarterfinal, and you see all these incredible defensive players, dominating these games and making huge plays. And you're like, man, I want to get my hands on one of those guys. And I think this gives you an opportunity to go out and potentially get a Reuben, Bane, or
David
someone
Bane,
like that,
or a Sonny Styles, or I would even be surprised if someone like Arvell Reese falls to the early teens, or, so it just gives you so many possibilities. And Landon, with the Cowboys not having a second or third round pick, if you want to trade back from 12 to 18 and pick up a second round pick, be my guest. That's the value of losing a game that nobody is going to remember, 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now. And honestly, as I was prepping for the show today, I was on some Giants message boards and some Reddit threads, and they were furious that they won this game, because it's the same thing. They had an outside chance at the number 1 pick. They were basically locked into the number 2 pick. And now I believe they're drafting at 5. And that is a huge difference when it comes to the caliber of players that you're going to get. And for a Giants team who I believe they were the first team eliminated from postseason contention to not even get a top 3 pick, it's a nice little treat in there as well.
Yeah, I saw a ton of Tennessee fans that were cheering very, very loudly for the Cowboys to continue to lose those ball games and to lose this ball game. So yeah, it certainly, I know that it did a lot of shuffling at the bottom of this roster as well, which I think it helps you by proxy of just not making sure that your division rival levels up as quickly while having a potentially top 5 pick.
All right, let's talk about some of the things that we like from the game, including a nice performance by Jaydon Blue. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Drip Drop. Kicking off the year feeling good is the goal, right? And honestly, hydration is the easiest win. And when I stay on top of it, my energy, my focus, and my mood are all leveling up. But let's be real, plain water just doesn't always cut it, especially when you're grinding through long days, hitting the gym, or just trying to stay consistent with your health goals. And that is where Drip Drop comes in. Doctor-developed, proven fast hydration that helps your body and mind work together. Think clear focus, better energy, elevated mood, and even that fresh skin glow. I've been using Drip Drop as part of my daily routine over the last couple of weeks, and it's unbelievable how much more energy I have in the morning. When you're kind of slogging through those first couple hours of work, Drip Drop is there to keep you hydrated. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That is dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up right now at dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. This episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with Prize Picks, it's always good to feel right. And with high-pressure football matchups every single weekend, in elite hoops action almost every single night, the action never slows down, and Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. And getting started on Prize Picks is quick and simple, and the app is super easy to navigate. So download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. If you haven't done so every day, or check out the Everydayer Club. For just $5 a month, you're going to get ad-free episodes to the show, plus an exclusive Discord server access and so much more. Check out the link in the show notes or go to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com. All right, Landon, let's talk about the Cowboys running backs in this game. No Javonte Williams, no Malik Davis. Your guy, Hunter Lipke, got the start, but 16 carries for Jaydon Blue in this game for 64 yards and a touchdown. How do you think he performed?
I mean, carrying the ball, he looked fantastic. And I think, obviously, they solved our little problem about our concern about his pass protection woes by – I mean, I don't think I saw any snaps where he was in pass protection, right? So it was they weren't throwing the ball very much. I think at one point they were at almost a 60% run clip on the offense overall. So they were feeding the ball a lot to Jaydon Blue and to Phil Moffitt, which that makes a ton of sense, right? That's a way to kind of get a chance to look at these young running backs. It's a way to get Dak in the game without necessarily risking him a bunch, especially without Javonte Williams, like we've mentioned. And I think it gave them, these young guys, the opportunities they needed to kind of build some confidence as runners of the football, because that's the other thing too. I mean, look, we'll talk about Phil Moffitt in a second, but specifically for Jaydon Blue, like, we needed to see some juice from him. Like, I think we've seen it a little bit, but I mean, to make this kind of the whole thing worthwhile, I mean, we've dealt with his inability to kind of get onto the field because he was kind of struggling to practice the way that they needed him to make this all worthwhile. Like, he also needs to be explosive and dangerous and show us something to make this, experiment worth it. And I think he gave you a little bit of that today. Some of the runs between the tackles where he was able to use, kind of nifty footwork to get between quick creases that closed very quickly, but he was able to squirt through for some big yards. I think he had a two back-to-back explosive runs, if I'm not mistaken, where he had a 12-yard and I think it was a 27-yard right after it. And then he had kind of a series of runs for losses. And I don't know if you noticed that, but it felt like he had like upwards of 3 to 4 carries for losses. And we need to kind of go back and look at the all 22 to see exactly, what
some
that
of those
was,
weren't his fault. Some of those were just guys breaking right through the line of scrimmage, and he couldn't do anything about it. So I give him some benefit of the doubt. Yep. But
I think you saw what, you were why you drafted the guy, right? A little bit more today in some of the runs, which I think was fantastic. And I'd like to hear your thoughts too, and then we can talk about Phil Moffitt.
Well, it's funny because I think this Jaydon Blue game sums up Jaydon Blue in every sense. Like, you see the athleticism and how quick and decisive he can be and how explosive he is. And those big runs are what, honestly, the Cowboys have kind of lacked this year. They've had a really good running game, but they haven't had these big plays. But you also see the inexperienced in Jaydon Blue, where there's a time, I think it was on one of the long runs, he makes an awesome cut. And if he just stays to the outside, he has like a 50-yard touchdown. Instead, he cuts it back up into the middle of the field, and it's still a good run, but I think a more developed runner knows kind of where to go on that one. There's a play, I think, in the third quarter where he just lets an arm tackle to the shoulder. I mean, a guy just barely touches him in the shoulder, and it brings him down. And it ends up being like a 2-yard gain where I think, a stronger running back probably gets 7 or 8. He needs to play, and I think playing more will help. You look back at his history playing football, he just does not have a lot of carries under his belt, even going back to high school. He didn't play at all his senior year of high school. He needs these reps, but you also have got to earn them throughout the week.
Well, and I think the other thing too is that he needed the confidence. He needed, as much as he needed to show us, he needed to show himself, I think, a little bit that he could do this a little bit more. Because here's the thing. I think for him to kind of be a valuable or more valuable back than he is at this point, he needs to get a little bit stronger. Right. He needs to be able to break tackles a little bit better, because that's been an issue, is that it just felt like the arm tackle thing was something that we saw throughout the season when he got opportunities, is that he wasn't, making people miss by running through arm tackles. It was, using his footwork and not getting touched. But once he was touched, he wasn't staying upright the way he needs to. So I think he needs to kind of get stronger. That's going to be an effort thing. And so that's why we need him to have a little bit of faith in himself that he can do this. So hopefully he'll have a really strong offseason, get some strength, and then we'll come back and we'll see exactly what we've got in year 2 next year. Real quick, Phil Maffa, I think, for the fact that we're getting a first look at him for the entire season in the last game of the season, I thought he ran well and he looked good. He looked efficient. He had that one run where they kind of ruled it initially a fumble, but his knee was down. But I thought, that was a great example of the kind of running style that you can expect from him. Just a guy that's going to give you what is blocked and then finish strong and going forward and trying to barrel through guys. He isn't going to necessarily make a ton of guys miss, but he could be part of a punishing kind of running committee, especially next year. Maybe you can give Javonte Williams a couple breaks and still put him in short yardage situations if you need to, and he can be efficient. Obviously he has a long way to go as a pass protector, but like I said, we didn't have to see a lot of that because of the way they game planned this whole game against the Giants.
I still think he's probably a year away, and honestly I think he's a guy I think going forward should probably be more of a practice squad running back that you bring up in case you have emergencies, because he's not overly dynamic. You can tell, watching him run, there's just a lack of burst there. He does run hard and he's got some power, but those guys can stay on practice squad, and it's like a break glass in case of emergency thing. I think they need to retool this backfield, whether that's bringing back Javonte Williams and then spending a mid-round pick on a running back, or maybe trying to upgrade from Javonte Williams. You guys know how much I like Phil Maffa, but to me, he's somebody that I think you're hoping is on the practice squad next year rather than being a number 2 guy.
You know what I actually envision it is let's say you've got a running back too, whether that's Jaydon Blue or someone else. I could imagine Maffa being the 3rd running back on the roster who plays a ton of special teams if he can get a role like
basically
that.
Replacing Malik Davis, right?
Yeah, like that kind. Except not where Malik Davis is now, but maybe more Malik Davis where he was before, right?
Correct.
That 3rd running back who's mostly his job is special teams, because I think Maffa has the body type to play special teams, right? And so I think he could also do double duty there and be a useful game day roster guy.
Let's talk about Joe Milton, who played the entire second half in this one. 7-13, 73 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. He did have 43 rushing yards, and you see the value that he can bring as a runner.
Yeah.
You also see why I think the Cowboys have not been super excited to give him a bunch of opportunities, because he still struggles to read the field a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's, he's definitely got an incredible arm, and there's definitely been times throughout his young career that you feel like, could this guy be a gamer? Obviously that was the case.
Well, there was a couple throws, he had a really nice play to Flournoy where he escaped out of the left and put, a little bit of touch on the ball, didn't rifle it in there, and it was a 33-yard gain. And it was one of those plays that I'm like, okay, this is okay. And then he's running the ball, he's stiff arming some defensive backs, and then he has an interception where he throws it right to a linebacker.
Yeah, and then there's another player, I think it was before the interception, where he missed a wide open guy. And like, it's like there's certain things that you can kind of do and you get to learn, but there's at a certain point you've got to start picking up the gimmies, and then like that you got to have, you got to take the easy wins. And I think that's where he still struggles at times, is he can still make the big play. Like you still see the big arm, and when he needs to use it, he can. He still has the legs to pick up a first down, on critical situations by getting out the front of the pocket. But if you're not able to pick up the kind of gimme plays, the easy wide open situations on a consistent basis, it's hard to make ends meet as an NFL quarterback.
One more thing on the offense before we move on to the defense. Ryan Flournoy led the team in receiving yards, 7 targets, 5 catches, 68 yards. The last 5 games that he's played, again, albeit as a number 3 receiver, 34 yards, 115 yards, 40 yards, 18 yards, 68 yards. I feel really good about him going into the offseason. I know he's going to be older. He turns 27 next year, but it feels like the Cowboys have found their number 3 receiver, and I expect Flournoy in year 3, which is when these younger receivers really develop, to take a big step in 2026.
Well, and you don't need him to take a huge step. I mean, I think he can function perfectly fine as a wide receiver 3 at the level that he is. I think you're right that he's still a young in NFL years player, and he still has a ways to grow for sure. But as far as like worrying about like, if he's too old to kind of develop past where he need to go, he doesn't need to go too much further for what the Cowboys need, right? And I think he's already an extremely valuable wide receiver 3. And I only expect that kind of to grow with the confidence going into the offseason, knowing that role is his until someone comes to take it. And I think he'll train that way. And in another year, it'll be interesting to see exactly where he gets.
All right, let's talk about the Cowboys defense that gave up 34 or more points for the 7th time this season. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. The new year doesn't require a new you, maybe just a less burden you. We all carry things that weigh us down or hold us back, and therapy can help you identify what those things are by offering an unbiased perspective to better understand your relationships, your motivations, and your emotions. And that is where BetterHelp comes in, making it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist who can help you work through what's holding you back. They do all of the matching work for you. A short questionnaire identifies your needs and preferences. And with over 12 years of experience, they typically get it right the first time. And all BetterHelp therapists are fully licensed in the US and work according to a strict code of conduct. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is in full swing. We're officially into the playoffs, and there's nothing like being at the game, the crowd noise, the energy, and cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. And the frustrating part is always trying to get those tickets, whether it's waiting in queues, dealing with logins, or watching prices jump right at the checkout. But that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack of unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I love how easy the app is. And one of my favorite features is that you can get the exact view from your seat in the app before you buy. And knowing that tickets are backed by the Game Time guarantee gives you real peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Landon, let's talk about the Cowboys defense. They gave up 34 points. Another dreadful outing. And this was a defense that basically had all of their starters out there outside of Deron Bland. Why was it so bad again this week?
I mean, probably the same reasons that it's been bad every week, right? Like, just felt disorganized. It felt, disinterested at times. Really bad tackling was definitely a huge part of this, specifically on that, was it Bellington touchdown?
Bellinger touchdown, yeah, it was
Bellinger, I meant
awful.
touchdown. Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes down to the fundamental stuff, and I mean that literally and kind of figuratively. Like it's tackling. It's about being lined up correctly. It's about knowing your assignments. A lot of those things. It felt like everyone kind of got the memo about playing poorly, except Jadeveon Clowney, who had a career day today with 3 sacks. But yeah,
but he's been playing hard. We should give him credit. That was one of the better
absolutely.
signings the Cowboys did make. I know the defense is awful, but Clowney played his tail off for them this year, and I think pretty easily was their best defensive end all season long.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got way more out of him than what at least what I was expecting out of him, right? And I think he's playing some of the best football of his career, in some ways, right? Like, yeah, I do think you got a lot out of Clowney. I thought Ezraku played well up until the penalty, where it felt like that whole situation kind of went down. I mean, it feels
why did they take the sack away from him? That one I don't get. It's a young player trying to make a big play. He gets a sack, and yet they decline it for 5 yards of field position, and then the Giants get the first down anyways.
Yeah, I know. That's like, again, I wouldn't have taken away the sack. I didn't understand that. So,
and you heard Clowney. Clowney was screaming at the coaches to decline it. Like, you've got your teammates wanting you to decline it, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the end of a very frustrating season and a very extremely frustrating unit side of the ball. And look, Dak talked about it after the game. And in fact, I have the quote for you real quick. It's really frustrating kind of to watch it, but then to hear Dak say something like, "This felt like one of the first seasons I can't necessarily correlate my play to the wins and losses." I mean, that's as strong as an indictment, I feel like, as you're going to get from Dak Prescott about the state of this defense and where they are. So I do hope, obviously this is more of the same, and not to kind of bring it back to the 10,000 foot into the season view of this thing, but you do hope that this is kind of like again, well beyond the last straw to finally kind of galvanize the front office to do something in the offseason, maybe free agency, as I was hinting at, to kind of help improve this defensive roster while you have Dak playing what he called some of the best football that he's been playing his entire career.
I was watching the game with my brother on Sunday, and I was kind of half joking, saying I kind of want the defense to have another stinker, because the last thing you want is Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones to think, okay, we're not that far away. We can use one pick on a running back or an offensive tackle, where they need to use almost every resource on defense to try to get this unit back to being competent. They're not close. I mean, they have a couple pieces up front at defensive tackle. They've got a young edge rusher that we like in Ezraku, but they probably need 5 to 6 starters on defense, and honestly, probably 8 contributors on defense. Didn't want to have one fluky game at the end of the season that maybe changed their philosophy. But you give up 34 to this Giants team that was missing multiple offensive line starters, multiple receivers. If you're not getting the messaging now, I don't know if you ever will.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you can, probably plus or minus some of that starter stuff by improving the play caller situation, or at least getting a situation in which you have a play caller that knows how to compensate for a lack of talent. But you can't, in a system like Eberflus's, which is built on having talent in place, the Cowboys are not close to that. And I was talking to somebody on Twitter. It's like the Seattle versus the Houston defenses, and like the difference between the two. And one is built, not completely on scheme, but heavily on the use of scheme, which really complements a very good roster of players. And then the Houston group is very straightforward. They're running very simple concepts. They are just better than you, and they're going to beat you up. So the Cowboys are a little bit further.
Yeah, they've got the best edge duo in the league. They've got the best cornerback duo in the league, and they've got multiple other Pro Bowlers scattered around on that defense. That would be a really nice problem to have if you don't even need to have a great scheme, because your players are that good. A big offseason coming up for the Cowboys, needless to say. We'd like to thank you guys for following us and listening to us all season long.
Yes.
We're going to have some really busy and fun shows for you guys over the next couple of weeks. There's going to be a ton of coaching changeover here with the Cowboys, as you can imagine. but they're going to be active in free agency. We hope. We expect some trades. And obviously the draft coming up. We've got Senior Bowl, East-West Shrine Game, Combine. Make sure that you are following the Locked On Cowboys podcast, downloading the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we'll see you right back here on Tuesday.